Good. How we doing?
Trent.
Hey,
All right. So we've got Trent Staggs on. We were singing your praises before you come on about the impressiveness for me is obviously how you jumped into the game immediately. And I think that's,
prepared to take on the Goliath, which is Mitt Romney, and the endless supply of money that he probably has backing
Yep.
a campaign. You jumped in. Was it May when you started your campaign?
It was, yeah. It was right around Memorial Day, or right before Memorial Day weekend that we jumped in. And as you noted, the only one that was willing to do that and take on the establishment. I think that's been pretty indicative of my entire career in elected office and my campaign, the way in which I've decided to run it. It really has been no different. We're ready to take them on. And I think that has really resonated with voters and with organizations that have stepped up and endorsed my candidacy. You know, we've received so many, and I was actually on the phone with the president of Moms for America, Kimberly Fletcher, just yesterday. And that was one thing that she talked about, and what was, I think, a deciding factor in terms of getting their endorsement, and so many she's talked to throughout the state.
That's fantastic. In fact, I don't want to go too off the rails, but the guest we had on before you, we were talking about policy that's been presented to the Salt Lake Council regarding trans people in the rec center locker rooms and how it's a big fight at the council. And this gentleman was adamant that where are the moms? We need to have moms standing up protecting their kids. And I mean, we're living in a totally different world, Trent, than what our parents lived in.
mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, what does the policy look like for a future senator in this world? Because you're not talking about, financing the military and this and that. You're talking about DEI and ESG and everything else, like this craziness. So do tell, what does that look like?
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. You know, as a parent, my wife and I have a 14-year-old son and 11-year-old daughter. They are one of my main reasons, the impetus for me running for office, because we are living in just such a different time. And this is part of my record in calling things out. I mean, it was just a year ago, roughly, that I called out the Jordan School District. They have their headquarters in Riverton, where they have their board meetings. And after being advised from several parent organizations about around 140, 150 books in junior high and high schools that were incredibly inappropriate, I mean, pornographic, they're available, I had to stand up and say something, and we did. We called out the school district to please take action to change the way in which your policy allows parents to contest inappropriate materials. I mean, they were making it very burdensome. A parent could only contest 2 materials, and it had to be per school. You couldn't get it out district wide. And so that's something that I've stood up and called out. And if you go to my website at trentstaggs.com, what I've been campaigning for 6-7 months now, it hasn't changed. It says, I want, and I will champion every day as your senator, smaller government, safer families, and a stronger economy. And safer families, we call this out. I say there needs to be a separation, a wall of separation between woke and state. And that is something to do.
Can we get that on a t-shirt?
Yeah.
Seriously, I like that. That is awesome.
Well, and with that, I know that you have been a proud supporter of Donald Trump in a lot of the
Yes.
policies that he was trying to get forward. And he was stopped a lot by his own party. And
That's right.
I'm wondering, and then we were just discussing this, how do you, one man, get to the Senate and of course represent Utah values, but also represent America First principles, with our own party making these type of things difficult for you on the national level?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I am the only America First candidate in this race, the true constitutional conservative. I've been there from day one. I've endorsed President Trump. I wrote an op-ed published in the Washington Times months ago, right shortly after announcing my candidacy, wholeheartedly endorsing, supporting President Trump. We need him back in office. I mean, it's been such a disastrous past 3 years with the Biden administration, from everything. I mean, foreign policy, energy policy, the border, inflation, Bidenomics, you name it. It's been a complete disaster. And on this point, I had Kash Patel come out just 2 weeks ago to Utah. We did a couple of events. Kash was the chief of staff of the Department of Defense during Trump, on the National Security Council. He's endorsed my candidacy. So has Rick Grinnell, Kerry Lake, Mark Levin, and Charlie Kirk, and all these champions. But Kash in particular, he knows very well. He said, look, we need President Trump back in office, but if we don't have a supportive Congress, a supportive Senate, we're not going to be able to advance the agenda, because as you so aptly pointed out, we had many, including Mitt Romney, the person I'm willing to replace, that would not support President Trump on some of the most critical issues with border security and in fighting, the deep state. And that's exactly what we need. That's what I want to do. And I'm actually very optimistic, because I was just out in Palm Beach this past weekend doing events with Kerry Lake. Turning Point had their gala at Mar-a-Lago, and I was out there this past weekend, and visiting with Kerry, talking with Jim Banks, who is a congressman from Indiana that's now running for Senate, with Matt Rosendale of Montana, same thing, congressman now running for Senate, Bernie Moreno out of Ohio. There's some great America First candidates out there, and we can get into office. We can join the ranks of the few numbers we have right now. I'd like to work with Senator Lee, with Rand Paul, with Rick Scott, Ron Johnson, J.D. Vance, Eric Schmidt, I think Josh Hawley. To a large extent, these senators, if we can join the ranks and swell that number to 10, 12 plus true America First conservatives, constitutional conservatives, we'll have enough. We'll have enough numbers to go ahead and move the ball and actually be able to effectuate the change that Utahns want, that I'm hearing desperately across the state, as I've done more than 50 town halls now.
Well, and you've done a town hall out here in Tooele County. We appreciate that. And you've been more than available to our humble county. And I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being on the show today. And I like the things you say. I mean, it's I'm sorry, but it sounds too logical. And I know you're a businessman at heart, and you mentioned before, I mean, you try to run and serve your community of Riverton the way you would a successful business. So would you go into how you see, as a senator, you can implement what you know as a businessman into that? Because we thought the same with Romney when he started. And I didn't see a ton of Romney's business. I know he's a successful businessman, but yeah. I'm curious where you see you could provide something along those realms, because Trump was a successful businessman. He's also failed at business and built it back up, 3 times, 4 times? And I think some people it's logical and it's simple to a lot of wealthy and very successful businessmen and women. That's very logical on how they do that. And a lot of it has to do with heart, but a lot of it has to do with common sense. So tell us, how do you see running or serving and making a difference in policy in the United States government?
That's a great question. And, sadly, yes, Romney has not really applied any business acumen, let's say, to governing. And that's something he promised. I mean, I remember 5 years ago as a mayor, he came and asked for support. He put out a video, said the same thing to me in person. He put on his video, elect me. I'm going to balance the budget. I'm going to end illegal immigration. I'm going to stop federal spending and overreach, and I'll appoint or confirm conservative justices. His record's been just the opposite. And here's somebody who, on the debt, on spending, he's just voted for trillions more. We're 34 trillion in debt. I've told people I get angry when I talk about it.
Yeah.
That is the height of immorality to place that level of debt on my kids and on future generations. And I feel like I've been fortunate in my 10 years in elected office in Riverton to try to take an entrepreneurial business person approach to municipal government. We've done it. I've actually cut taxes in the formation of our new police department, getting out of the county level. I've found that time and again, we actually brought governmental services closer to the people, and it's become less expensive, and the level of service has improved. We did
Wow.
it with police, with a fire district, with animal control services, time and time again. And that move has now saved our taxpayers about $15 million in property taxes over the last 4 or 5 years. We continue to see gains, and we'll continue to innovate. I've In 10 years in office, we've basically had no net fee increases, and the 5-year forecast that I have shows we won't need to raise fees across our water, sanitation, all the city services, and that's a pretty remarkable accomplishment in light of the inflationary environment we live in today. So
Right.
it can be done, but it's going to take somebody who has that competency, who's demonstrated an ability to bring efficiencies into government. And we've got a lot of inefficiency at the federal level. Can't wait to get in there. I mean, somebody like myself who understands federalism, the proper role of government, who understands the power of local control. I think that's a big difference between me and any others in this race. And I think why I'm winning the support of my colleagues, other mayors, and county commissioners, and it's been really humbling to receive that level of support from around 100 locally elected officials.
I would like to go back in time.
Wouldn't we all?
You were one of them evil, dastardly mayors whose people during the COVID farce, and
Yes.
you caught a lot of flack for that. And I think that right there, just that alone is why I'd vote for you, just because you stood in the way of and I'm going to throw names out: the Salt Lake Tribune and KSL and Deseret News from strong arming the populace into, their what should I call it? Their trade's political will. And you stood in the way and you caught flack, and I appreciate that, and that's impressive.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That is something that I think it's consistent, right? I like to say I'm consistently conservative, authentically Utah. This is what I've demonstrated over 10 years. And yeah, seeing that, I like the word you used there, Jared, the farce, seeing COVID for the farce that it was, and said, nope, not in my community. I'm not. Yeah, I'll never forget. Yeah, the call that I got from Salt Lake County officials wanting me to use my police department to go enforce mask mandates and social distancing at our parks. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. Nope, we're not even enforcing that anywhere in my city.
And it's
we're
not
gonna,
like you're out here in Tooele or in Tremont or one of the small towns. You're in one of the metropolitan towns, and that took a lot of backbone what you did.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's the type of demonstrated resolve that I think we need. I mean, look, we're 34 trillion in debt. We've got a regulatory state run amok. We've got federal agencies weaponized against its citizenry. It's going to take folks that have demonstrated that type of resolve and backbone to stand up and say no. And I think I'm unique in that respect in this office. And I did have people, Salt Lake City, other residents. I mean, because when it hit the news, I received some very strongly worded emails and phone calls, let's just say that, from folks that were not happy with the actions that I was taking. They thought I was going to kill everybody, and it's just absurd. We err on the side of freedom, and that's what we did in Riverton, not just with the mask mandate, but the vaccine mandate. People forget
Yeah.
that the Biden administration, they were wanting to use OSHA to force vaccines on any company or any organization that had more than 100 employees. And our city has 170 employees. We're about an $80 million a year budget, 50,000 roughly residents. And I said, no way. I signaled straight away, we're not going to do that at all. I will not comply with this whatsoever. And fortunately, we had other folks stand up and say that, and it didn't end up going that way with the Biden administration.
You know, Trent, I was a national delegate for Trump. I'm a huge supporter of Trump and his policies, and I would have liked to see him actually accomplish more. But this stance you took was even braver than Trump, and I think he still needs to be accountable for the whole COVID thing. And of course, we didn't know what we don't know, but my hat's off to you, because you're going to have people surrounding you that are going to give you what you should do, and the people that surround you and advise you. And again, it's that little annoying thing called common sense, and you want to err on the side of freedom. And I think that, to me, a bottom line for me is I always want someone who's thinking, first, is this constitutional? Nope. Second, does it err on the side of freedom? I know in our own county, our council was also being encouraged to do the same. And a ton of people showed up at their council meeting, and our sheriff took that stance. I'm not arresting people. Our deputies aren't going out to do that. And I just think even in Utah, that was brave. So my hat's off to you on that. And I don't think we've seen the last of COVID or another form of it. And I'm very hopeful that whoever is representing our state up there will have those same ideals.
For the next current thing that we have come down the pike, the next thing that they're going to use to try to, I don't know, stifle free speech
Comply.
or free movement, or even just to, just to make you comply to whatever. Everyone's got to give themselves a wedgie and walk around Main Street. Seriously, that's where we're headed.
I wanted to know, I'm sure you've seen the vote, and maybe you've seen Thomas Massey's response to the vote that was just passed through the House. And you talk about $32 trillion in debt. We're talking $800 billion. And I'm curious, are you prepared to be unpopular with the Republican Party? Are you prepared to be a one-term senator if it means that you stand up against spending like this, or bills that are this size and this, I don't know, diluted?
Well, and the other question is, are you ready? Like, if you get in there, I imagine the Republican Party, the greater Republican Party right now is headed up by, Romney's niece. And she's been knocking it out of the park, throwing big W's on the board,
Get to your question, because I don't want to forget mine.
Are you ready to take challenges from them?
Yeah, the short answer is absolutely. Whatever it takes, if it means being a one-term senator, look, we need people that are mature, that are going to get in there and make change. The status quo is not working for people. That's why we're $34 trillion in debt. That's why we have all the issues that we have today. And so, I really admired Senator Lee in this last year, where he took on the debt ceiling fight back in May, authored a letter saying, look, Biden, we're not going to raise the debt ceiling unless we get substantial spending cuts and budget reform. 42 other Republicans signed that. Sadly, Mitt Romney did not. He was not serious at all about the debt ceiling. And these votes that continue to happen, the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, I think that you were referencing there, it's just, we can't keep doing this. I was really discouraged too that I know Senator Lee was trying to pull out the 702 provision of FISA from that bill and its approval, because here you've got literally warrantless searches going on, hundreds of thousands on American citizens, not foreigners, but American citizens are being spied on by their own government. And the Senate that's overseeing this, they don't even have access. That FBI Director Christopher Wray was talking about it. He doesn't even make the protocols available to the Senate Oversight Committee, saying, "Oh, just trust us." For that reason alone, I'd voted no on the NDAA. But yeah, the budget component of it is very scary. I have made a contract with Utah. I put that out the other month. There's 7 pieces of it, but 2 of them call for I firmly contract with Utah to have a balanced budget amendment, number 1. Number 2, I will not vote. I absolutely will not vote for an omnibus spending bill. period, end of story. And I liked this last omnibus spending bill that got passed that kicked Kevin McCarthy out of his House, speakership. It shouldn't have been passed. If it means the government shuts down and we become unpopular, so be it, because we've got to get back to a regular sense of order where we have 12 appropriation subcommittees that all have budgets that they should be passing with plenty of room for amendment and debate. And we're just more transparent, and we get out of this continuing resolution, omnibus spending. That's what's killing us. And if it means it shuts down, I think Senator Lee jokingly or half jokingly said, hey, 15 days to slow the spread. It's kind of making a joke about the COVID, the topic we were just speaking of. But if that's what it takes, so be it, because we can't do this anymore.
Yeah, let's do 15 days to slow down government.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and if you're willing to risk, I remember when the government shut down under Obama and Republicans were demonized for it. Ted Cruz was especially. But Obama had to have police go and babysit the memorials and the national, World War II monument. He shut them down when that's an open air monument you walk through, and
but you can't punish people if you don't shut them down. If you leave them open, you can't punish those evil right wingers.
This is a way to do their stab at the Republican Party, and I'm refreshed at the thought that as long as if the government shuts down, our senior citizens still get paid. I know that a lot of things still get paid because of previous bills where that's been voted on. But I don't know where this ends. How do we ever get out of debt in this country? Honestly, is there ever a solution?
Sell off the state of Alaska? Yeah, I'm joking. Yeah, I'm joking. I really, it's going to be, first we got to, what's the old adage that says, if you're in a hole, the first thing to do is stop digging.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So we need to do that, get back to that sense of order, the 12 appropriation subcommittees. In 1974, I remember this as the year I was born, we had the 1974 Congressional Budget Act. And since then, that called out this budgetary process. We've only passed a budget on time as a country 4 times in nearly 50 years. We keep doing these continuing resolutions. We haven't had a balanced budget since 2001, 23 years. And so first things first is to stop digging the hole, no more budget deficits. There's a lot of areas where we can cut. I know people claim, well, most of it, the interest on the debt and entitlement spending is a good 2/3 of the budget. There's not a lot of room. No, there's a lot of room where we can still cut. And I love, I obviously have endorsed President Trump, and want to see him back in office. I love some of the ideas like Vivek Ramaswamy, though, is promulgating out on the campaign trail, where he wants to cut 75% across the board with some federal employees. And there's many organizations or agencies, federal agencies, that can be eliminated altogether because they're duplicative. There's no reason to have so many of these.
Vivek he's writing a romance novel right now is what he's doing. That guy he says some stuff and I'm like, oh man, that's fantastic.
Well, and I've talked to you before about this. If there was a possibility where it came before the Senate to audit, investigate the FBI, to audit, investigate the Department of Education, the Department of Energy, I'm like, all of these different things should be more state level. And I think if we could dissolve the FBI maybe into local law enforcement, go into how you could see, that plan was, do tell, because that was really interesting.
Start with the Department of Education. It's on my website. That's another part of the Safer Families high level, theme, overarching theme. There's a policy that I've got there I want to implement, which is just get rid of the Department of Education. There's no constitutional directive for it. This was something created back in the Carter administration. It's a boondoggle. I've got a couple of state school board members that have endorsed my candidacy, and we only rely on about 6 to 7% of our state education budget relies upon federal dollars, but they control everything with that amount. So they've got about $184 billion in the budget here this fiscal year for them. It's insane. We need to stop doing that, funding that. It should be at the state level entirely. Parental control is A to Z for me, and that should all be administered at the state level, and have parents stand up and assert themselves and be responsible for their own children's education. The federal government is a complete failure at this. So that's first and foremost. I think a lot of these other agencies, like the FBI, yes, half the agents I think are, Vivek has claimed, don't even do anything. The other half can be folded into existing agencies. There's a lot of duplication like that. I was back in DC just the other month. I spoke with Grover Norquist of Americans for Tax Reform, and he called out, he said, Trent, I'd love you to sponsor a bill that's been talked about but never really filed, where they claim, and I saw the numbers, there's around 200,000 members or employees of the Department of Defense that are just clerical in nature that we could eliminate, and it would have zero impact to national defense and national security. I mean, just calculate how many hundreds of millions of dollars just to keep those 200,000 people employed, that by many people in the DOD, by their admittance, don't really do anything.
Well,
I mean,
that's
we got going on.
That's one thing. Now you're talking about putting people out of work.
Well, they
And
just lost
they just lost $6 trillion unaccounted for, and they fail the audit every year. Would you ever let a person who's a CEO of one of your companies or whatever, as a logical businessman, would you ever tolerate that? Even if it was 600 million or 600,000, that's just unaccounted for.
Let's ask it like this. You're the Riverton mayor, and the Riverton Police Department loses 8% of the city's income. Like, not accounted for spending. It disappears, but it disappears through them. What would you do?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm the CEO of the city by statute, state and city statute, of Riverton City. And you would, I mean, for me, I would fire that person immediately. I mean, they wouldn't be, and that's what would happen in the business world. We can't, people have to be held to account. And that's why there's such a low level of trust in government these days, sadly, is because they're not seeing people be held accountable. They see agencies that are weaponized against their own citizens. They see money mismanaged, misspent all the time. They see 140 billion going to Ukraine to go defend that country versus taking care of our own border situation. I mean, that's the problem. It's the status quo. It's people going there to become part of the establishment. I think Tucker Carlson said it best in his book, Ship of Fools. We've been literally run by a ship of fools, and people that care more about themselves, about ingratiating themselves into this establishment, maintaining their own power, enriching themselves, than they care at all about fulfilling the wishes of their constituents. I mean, how else can you explain it? People don't want endless war. They don't want the illegal immigration situation that we have today. We can go on and on. They don't want the government spending and the inflation that we're experiencing. They want a good energy policy. Energy is the base of our economy, and yet these politicians continue to enact policy that is antithetical to the interest of their own constituents.